Hello, this is Lee back once again for another video, and you know what? It's August of 2016 as I create this video, and in October, the new WWE 2K17 video game is coming out for the various systems. The PC and Steam, and the Xbox One, and the Xbox 360. Yes, you heard that right. The PS3 and the Xbox 360 are getting WWE 2K17, and people theorize, well, maybe it'll be the last one because the Xbox One, the PS4 are taking over everything, blah blah blah. But nevertheless, looks like we have another 2 years of WWE games on the Xbox 360, which is fine by me because I really enjoy those games. Even though I do have a bone to pick, with 2K games, how they just keep releasing, pretty much the same game, but it has bugs and is plagued by, cheaters, hackers as they're called, griefing the game and trolling, and they really don't add anything new or good to the game. They just kind of tweak the roster and change the music and the menus around a little bit, but it's pretty much the same game. But essentially, the same thing is pretty much there. Well, I wanted to make a video where I talk about, the kinds of things that I think that, they should do to improve the game, which I don't expect them to. I don't think they will. It's too bad. They really should be. We should demand more, but I think they have a virtual monopoly on WWE games, and so they just figure, we'll just release whatever we want, and as long as there's a new shiny game out, with a shiny new roster, roughly equivalent to what's on television at the time, people will buy it. They'll pay the $60, and in a few months, the game will drop down to $20, and then after 2 years, we'll just shut down the servers, and blah blah blah. We'll just repeat it over and over again, and people will just fork over money for no reason, and they realize they can get away with it. But here, if I were in charge of the games, and these are things, these are not original ideas. Most of these ideas have come up by other people, but I would just like to, just put it out there, and if they're the game company, and if they listen to anything fans have to say, because I'm a fan, they can take these ideas. You can have them, 2K Games or whoever. I kind of wish another company would take it on, just because I feel like, 2K has just not done a very good job since 2K14, which was really the best, the height of quality in the series, and they just haven't gotten any better since then. It's gone downhill. It's really too bad. So, there's some major problems in the 2K WWE series, and I'll just start with some of the things that I notice in 2K16 for the 360. Now, the next-gen games I really won't comment on because, I haven't really played them. But I will say that I do notice from videos that the gameplay in the next-gen versions, Xbox One, PS4, is very slow. It's more akin to WWE 13. And I don't like that. I don't think the matches need to go on for 30 minutes to be good. And, unless you have a great internet connection, or if the other person, doesn't get frustrated, that can ruin gameplay because people quit. They don't want to sit around for that long. So I would say for the next gen versions, making them more like the previous gen would actually improve them, speed up the gameplay. That's what 14 did, and it did a great job. The systems can handle it. You don't have to be slow. It just looks more fake. It looks more boring. And also some of the mini games that you have to do for the next gen versions I don't think they work very well. I think they need to iron that out. And the My Career mode is far, far too repetitive and boring. Not enough customization, really. They really constrained it and made it just dull. So I don't think that they have really, done as much with the next gen as they should. But let's get back to the 360 version, which is pretty much the same as the PS3. The major problem is cheating. And, I am not a, skilled, coding programmer. I realize they have giant teams all working on these games, and they're working with engines, back from THQ, Ukes, these old, code bases. So it's probably very difficult to change, even one little thing. But nevertheless, cheating just ruins a game. So here's what players are doing. They have these external programs. They extract the save files from the console and they put it onto a PC, and they just take a little program that there's like half dozen of them at least out there, and you just modify it. And all you can do is you can take one move and replace it with another. And so to defeat this, I'm not sure if this is how, back in the day we had a thing called Punkbuster. It was a program that when you were running a, video game on your computer, you'd run this program in the background. And, as the host, would say, these are all the files that are, these are the values they're supposed to be set at. And if someone joins with a different value, it will override that, or it'll kick the person out. They get busted because people would modify their files to try to get an unfair advantage. They try to be, stronger or have, better weapons or something than you normally are allowed in the game to cheat. Well, I think something like that could be done in the WWE2K series to really improve things. Now with the hacks, they call it hacking or modding or cheating, whatever you want to call it. In the WWE games, you have the D-pad. It has those 4 taunts. All they do is they just replace the taunt with a finisher. And what that means is, the move can't be reversed, it can't be blocked, it automatically hits the person you're targeting, and you could just spam it over and over again. And, you can win a match with zero effort. It can't be stopped. So, the way to defeat that would just simply to be, when a person starts a match, it would just have a check. The game database, the online server, whatever, it would check to see, all the taunts. Do they match the database of taunts that are, default in the game? And if yes, fine. If no, either it would kick the person out, or better, it would just reset their taunts to the defaults. And it would do that with all the players. And if they did that, that would stop, 99% of the cheating, really. And they could go through, if they did just the taunts, but they should do it with all the moves. And maybe it would add just a little bit of extra load time just at the beginning of the game. But really, it's not like a PC game. Maybe they'd have to do this for the PC version. With PC games, someone could have the game running in one window, and they could have a separate program running in the background, which is constantly resetting the values. So you say, oh, well, I'm supposed to have 100 health. I'm going to say I have 999 health. And it keeps updating it. Well, the server would have to keep sending a signal saying, nope. Do you have 100 health? Do you have 100 or less? 100 less? No, no. And it would just kick you out if it detects at any time that you have the wrong value. Well, with the console game, you don't have to worry about that. Just at the beginning of the match. And they did this something like this with Fair Fight. The Fair Fight thing. Say if your character was, 100, it would, reset it back to whatever it was. Or if you're the wrong weight class or something like that. So, fixing the cheating is a big deal. Also, actually having moderation, because the system is built up so you can report people for cheating, and you have a warning level next to your profile, but it's never enforced. I mean, in the years that I've played, I've never seen anyone kicked, banned, or, anything for cheating. Certainly, there have been a few people kicked off of Xbox Live because they, did denial of service attacks basically to other players, making it so that their Xbox, wouldn't work. I mean, obviously, Microsoft themselves are losing money if people can't use their subscriptions and get mad because other players, messing with their internet connections. But that's a separate issue. I mean, we're talking about one game. If someone, buys your game, it's like, okay, we've got their money, and we don't care if their online experience is ruined forever by cheating. If every other game is a hack, a cheat, and you get paranoid and you start blaming anyone you play who beats you for cheating, it just ruins the whole experience. But I think a few simple, security checks in the software built in would solve that. Stop people from using freezes or hack pins, and God mode, which is just what people call it. It just means that your character has more than 650 hit points. If you could have 10,000 hit points, Again, a simple security check when the match begins. Does the character have 650 or less? Fine. If they don't, if they have more than that, then it would either kick them out or it'd reset it back to 650. So I think that could improve things drastically. So that would get rid of the cheating. Not removing, custom special moves didn't stop cheating at all, because most of the cheating was based on just replacing the taunts with other moves, which made them unblockable. But again, these security checks would not require, constant moderation. It's like, oh, I have to pay somebody to sit there and field all these complaints. Well, you should do that anyway, but the security checks, would stop, most of the cheating. Now the next thing is the targeting system. It seemed like the targeting system worked perfectly fine in 14, but in 15 and onward, it just got terrible. So imagine that you're playing in a match with, 2 or more characters. Really, like a 3-way or 4, 5, 6 players, these elimination chambers or whatever. You're focused on a certain wrestler and you're trying to go after him, but all of a sudden, your character focuses on the wrong person. So I don't know what they did to screw it up, but it worked fine before. So imagine you're in the ring with someone, and there's someone outside the ring behind you. And so you try to run towards the person in the ring and attack them, because when you hit the attack button, you turn around and attack the person outside the ring, even though they're way out of range. That's silly. Either allow manual targeting or fix that. That's stupid. But again, that's a step backwards. Another area, there's a couple of different moves that are supposedly unblockable. There's some glitches. You can throw someone in the corner, and they just stay there for ages and ages. And that allows you to, just get free hits in and just stall the match and delay. The taunting. Come on. I mean, there's people that all they do is spam taunts. And I mean, that's fine. That's a style of gameplay. Nothing wrong with that, but you do have the ability to disable submissions, for example, but you can't disable taunting, or just make it so the taunting gives 0 charisma. Yes, you can in offline matches, but in online matches you can't change that. At least make it so in player matches you can change that, I would say. So, anyway, couple of things. Now, moving on, there's so many game types that they had in previous installments, which were, just very, very good. I mean, really, like the Buried Alive match. I mean, yes, they had these, casket matches, but really it's just a cutscene, in single player. Just have a mini game where you throw them into the casket or whatever. It's fun because it recreates something from the TV show, and not exactly, but more in a gameplay style way, Just kind of has a satisfying ending. It's just kind of a neat little thing. Now, I think there's kind of a censorship thing going on. I mean, yes, you think about, Steve Austin, his middle fingers being censored. I don't have a big problem with that, but think about this. This is the way that you could solve all the sort of controversies and issues in the game. Have 2 separate servers. This is my idea, that you can have, one server, which is the kiddie server, the kids server. And this one would be moderated. It would have a little more censorship to, tone down the violence. There'd be no blood at all. Because really, you can't have online blood. Why not? Why not give the option to, if you turn on blood on, you can see it. Maybe the other person can't see it that you're playing unless they turn it on. You could have profanity in the music, all those sorts of things. I think if you have the kiddie server that's moderated and censored, but then you have the adult server, or the, unrated server, or whatever, where all that stuff is allowed. You don't have the absurd word censor that censors, not just profanity, but all kinds of innocent words and word combinations that have nothing to do with anything and make it look like you're swearing just because you, typed the wrong word choice in your text. So a minimally moderated server for the adults, and then one for the kids. And maybe when you first sign on, it says, how old are you? And if you're in the kid, or you just say, I choose to, go into a moderated server, to avoid being offended by certain things, you could choose to go into the kiddie server. And because moderators are watching, it would prevent people from trolling, bullying these little kids. But then the larger unmoderated server, you wouldn't have to worry about being, mollycoddled and, handheld, and you could just do a little bit more. I mean, sure, they would stop cheating, but beyond that, you could pretty much do whatever you wanted, or the underground, whatever. So I think by having those two servers, you could do a lot better. And then they could say, in the kiddie server, yes, we're going to try to look out for you, but on the unmoderated server, you're kind of on your own. Again, except for cheating. No cheating. I mean, if you have a private game and you cheat, and, well, I think even then, if you have the security check, it's not going to matter. People can cheat offline, I guess, if they want, but really, why would you buy the game just so that you can be invincible and never lose? And just do one move over and over again with no resistance? What's the point of that? Why would you pay $50 for that? And an Xbox Live connection. So the two servers, I think, would, again, create a much better gaming experience. Now, the next feature idea, I think, is one that has already been demonstrated in games like Mortal Kombat, and Street Fighter 4, where there's this ongoing problem with DLC, downloadable content. Every so often the companies for these games, they'll release, new features. You can download a little update, a little character pack, or, something like that. And it costs money, but once you get it, the problem with the 2K games is, okay, back in 2K14, if you downloaded the DLC, you could only see servers that had DLC, the same exact combination of DLC that you had. So as a result, only the people that bought the DLC were basically only had a tiny number of servers to play on, and most people who didn't have the DLC could see only the games for other people who didn't have it. Well, Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, so NetherRealm and Capcom got around this by releasing these free very small files, call them compatibility packs. And the compatibility packs were basically little downloads that allowed you, as the player, to join or host games and play with other players who had the DLC, even if you didn't have it. So the point is, like, let's say, the character was, let's just say Sting. Okay, so Sting is a new character that you don't have. But you try to join your friend's server who has Sting, but you can't even see his server because he has it and he can't see yours. Well, the compatibility pack means that you can join his game. You see him using the Sting character, you can fight him, but you can't choose that character. And the point is, it's good because not only can you play him, so there's more servers for both people, is that, you see it and go, that looks cool, I want to be able to use it, so you go and buy it. It actually promotes the DLC even more. So NetherRealm did this, Capcom did this, so why can't 2K Games or whomever do the same thing? Release compatibility packs, so that way, the DLC can be seen by all. And really, there's no reason why single-player DLC should screw up your created characters or screw up the compatibility with servers. Why would that even matter? That's stupid, that's silly. It should only matter for online characters, and for online characters, all you have to do is just make it so that, you get the compatibility pack, you can join their game and interact with them, but if you want to use it yourself, if you want to host it with that thing, you have to buy it. The same thing can be done for arenas. So if someone has like a special WCW arena that's DLC, it's pre-order bonus material, whatever. You can play in it, but you have to find your friend who bought it, and you can play on their game. But if you want to host your own game, you'd have to buy it, because the compatibility pack would only allow you to be a guest to see it. So I think that would actually help them sell more DLC, and it would give both the DLC buyers more servers to play on, and the non-DLC buyers more servers to play on. So simple fix. And so bringing back, old game modes, I said before, it's like the Buried Alive, the online Royal Rumble, where you have, a queue of players waiting for your turn, and you can chat with each other. You can watch the match until it's your turn to jump in. And if you quit, the AI takes over. Maybe they thought, it's not very popular. People just hate waiting. But I think people like it. I mean, there's some people that would rather watch the game than play it. So I think, they had it in WWE 12, SmackDown vs. Raw 2011, I believe. So why not? And maybe 13 as well. They had several games, these online Royal Rumble. Not just a battle royal where 6 people start out in the ring, but, people would keep joining in. You could have 20 people. I'm just thinking about, more features that they've had in previous games. I haven't played it, but, they say in the old SmackDown series, it wasn't just a backstage brawl where, you've got this, little loop around, some pop machines and some boxes and some cars where you fight, which is cool. It's neat. But you could fight in the arena. You can go out backstage, continue the match backstage. You could even do it split screen. I mean, the consoles of today have that ability. You could brawl out into outside, into the parking lot, and so just be multi-tiered and do this online. And you could have the ability to have options to say, backstage brawl, expanded brawl, arena brawl, parking lot brawl plus arena, whatever. Just give those options. And what's wrong with using a blue or black cage, besides just a regular steel cage? In a ranked match, what's wrong with that? It's just a color, but it just gives more variety. Why not just have a custom cage? You can do what you wanted. Just things like that. How about brawling out into the crowd? I mean, I think it was SmackDown vs. Raw 2010 had this ability, but it wasn't really brawling into the crowd. You weren't like throwing people around or people running to the side while you pick up chairs, and it was just kind of like going up the ramp, and you could pick up a sign, and if you were a heel, you tear it in half, and if you were a face, you would like point to the sign and cheer. But still, that was just a nice little feature. Just throw in a little bit more interactivity, a little more options. And if you look at the old brawls, the barroom brawl, ooh, we can't have alcohol. Well, put it on the adult server. Don't put it on the kiddie server then. The pop bar. The parking lot brawl was much better. You could just do a lot more. You could, get in cars and ram into people. Again, more Attitude Era type stuff. But the thing is, I mean, they bring back ECW. They bring back the Attitude Era. So, what's wrong with that? The video game audience isn't just kids, It's, they say the average game player is in their 30s. So, they remember all this stuff, and they can handle, the wacky, over-the-top violence in a video game, So anyway, there's a lot of things they could do. There's other things that, they haven't done in the series that, think about it. When you go back to the old Sega, this was on the Dreamcast in the arcade, WWF, Royal Rumble. They had 9 wrestlers in the ring at a time. But now we're limited to 6. Why is that? Is that because of the game engine? Just, if they had to, I suppose they can make the crowd detail go down a little bit. Just darken the arena a little bit. Blur the lower poly, crowd. Why does everyone in the crowd have to be this fully rendered, perfectly animated person? They look silly anyway because it's the same 5 people just doing the same thing. Custom crowds would be cool. Like you design the T-shirts of the people in the audience. T-shirt of your wrestler or whatever. But all that aside, why not have a match where there's 9 wrestlers in the ring, or 10, or 20, or 22, because they have had that in the history of WWF and WCW. They've had, 20 wrestlers in the ring before. I think just a few years ago they did this. So they can do that. And next would be intergender matches. Again, someone would say, oh, well, this is wrong. This is not what the product is. But really, in the Attitude Era, Stephanie McMahon, she fought Bobby Lashley, and, Brock Lesnar. China fought, Eddie Guerrero, different people. So, it's part of WWE history. And even in the series, they had, Mickey James against the Great Khali. It's kind of like a joke match, kind of a bonus thing. But still, why not have an intergender match? Sure, you could say the female wrestlers at a disadvantage most of the time, but it's like a handicap match, whatever. Some people like that, and it's not, some weird, creepy, perverted thing. It's just another option. And again, they could just put it on the adult server, the unmoderated server, And don't put it on the kiddie server if you're afraid. Just stick to the mixed gender where, for some reason, the women can beat up the men, but the men can't beat up the women, even though they're wrestlers. And it's not domestic violence. It's a fake fight. It's like in Street Fighter. Chun-Li can't fight with Guile or Ken or Ryu because, or Cammy can't fight Zangief. Or what about Mortal Kombat? Kitana or Melina can't fight Scorpion or Sub-Zero, huh? But you could say, well, Mortal Kombat is a M-rated game, but Street Fighter is a T, rated T for teen, and it still has men and women who fight one another in a fantasy setting. And really, it's not like wrestling is so realistic that you can't do it. The intergender matches. The thing is, people use hacks to play as gender-swapped characters anyway. And really, I mean, it's not cheating in that sense because the female character is weaker than the male character generally. I mean, you can make them the same, it's just visually different. But anyway, there's female characters that are used by female players, or maybe you just want to recreate your favorite female wrestler. I mean, WWE themselves have done so much to promote women's wrestling lately. They got rid of the Divas belt and changed it to the women's title, and they promote NXT women, Divas Revolution, Women's Revolution. Why not do it in their games? They focus so much on the men, but not the women. Do they really think that the only people that play their games are little boys? It's not true. Really, wrestling fans of all ages and all genders play these. And when people want to play online, they don't just want to play as Randy Orton or John Cena. They actually want to play as, Asuka and, Alexa Bliss and, Manami Toyota and Lufisto and, Mischief and Cheerleader Melissa and everybody else. Not just the people you see on TV. They want to play as themselves. They want to play as, Wonder Woman. They want to, whatever. Just let people have those options, I say. So there's a lot of other things they could prove in the game. Think about the career mode, the My Career mode, the much ballyhooed feature of the next-gen versions, which was really don't own an Xbox One, but there are videos out there of people playing My Career mode, and I've watched it. It's so boring. It's like they play the same matches over and over and over again. These plain arenas, and really the NXT mode of WWE 2K15, which was quite boring, I must say, was better than that. The road to WrestleMania from previous games, the single-player games, were much more interesting because, you followed kind of a storyline and through matches. Universe mode, much more interesting, but these My Career modes, it's just, okay, you start out and there's a trainer and they yell at you and you don't have very many moves and you kind of move to the next match. Or look at the TNA Impact game on the 360. Much more interesting. So there's so many things they could do with a career mode. But I was talking with another player about this, just basic things you could do. And this goes to past, wrestling video games, not just WWE, but, you start out as a small-time wrestler, you go from a jobber to like a mid-carder, and yes, it does break kayfabe because, you're, it's as if you're a real athlete or a real fighter. But anyway, you could go, and maybe you could have like a little locker room or like a trophy case, and it gets better and better as things go up. You get more money, you get, a nicer car, a nicer house. Your fan numbers go up, your pull numbers go up. You get little promotions. It could have little fake, newspaper headlines or TV commercials, showing that you were, a top dog or whatever, and, you're just going up in the polls. Other wrestling simulations have done that. Kind of extra layer onto the career mode would make it better, rather than just, okay, you play 200 matches, and they just get harder and harder, and then game over, yay. That's boring. You gotta have the idea, the illusion of a career that builds, and you can have little storylines that go on. Think of universe mode. Think of some of these features of past games and put that into it, and you could even have an online universe mode, really. Think about that, an ongoing thing. Which brings me to the next idea of a feature that they should have, and that's online titles. And really, online titles are something that apparently they have had at the series before. But think about this. Imagine that there's a belt, not just the WWE Championship. Fine. Here is where you'd have to have moderators. You'd have to have, referees that are, maybe people hired by 2K or whatever game company who would actually monitor the match. Maybe they could have a live stream on their web channel so people would watch it. That's what Twitch TV is. Personally, I think it's boring to watch other people's games unless they're really doing something fantastic. Why would I just want to watch someone play a game? I'd rather play myself. But anyway, you could have like a tournament, and these, the judges would watch to make sure no one cheated and everything, but they would see, oh, Billy from Orlando, got number 1. Okay, he's the contender, and he fights so-and-so. Maybe he goes against, whatever, the champion. It could be one of the programmers. It could be somebody they handpicked, from the testing team. They beat that guy, and then you get the title. So there would be this data that would follow you. And of course, they'd have to monitor it to make sure no one cheated. If you did cheat, you'd forfeit the title. But the idea would be okay, now Billy from Orlando has this little digital thing that only he has. He has the WWE title. And so now when he goes to another match, someone can challenge him, and if they beat him, they can win the title. But again, the title matches would always have to be moderated to make sure that people aren't cheating. So it wouldn't be like every match he plays. And the other thing is they could put in safeguards to prevent, someone from just winning the title and just like holding on to it. Like, oh, I'm never going to do a title match because I don't ever want to lose it. They have to say, well, you have to defend it every 7 days or every 30 days. And if you don't, you forfeit it. So if someone's, Xbox Live, subscription runs out, then sorry, you forfeit the title after so many days. And it just goes up for grabs, and they can have another tournament. Someone else could win, etc. And so they have to make sure people don't cheat, but I think that would be a really, really cool thing. And they could split it up so that, you could have international titles. Maybe everyone in the world can compete for certain ones, but maybe you could have a U.S. title that only U.S. people would compete for, or a Japan title, only people in Japan, different regions, wherever the game's being sold, or you could have maybe even the idea of a custom title. Like, let's say I want to create the Lien title. Ooh, yay. I create the Lien title. Well, who cares, right? Well, let's say I put it out there, and I put it up in a match and say, okay, you and me, we're going to compete for the Lien title. I win. I've got my own title. Yay. Now, what does that mean? Well, the title itself would get experience points. It'd have prestige attached to it. So let's say the more title matches I win with it, the higher the prestige. And so the prestige goes up. Now, how embarrassing would it be if I lost the title? But then maybe the game would keep track and say, well, Billy from Orlando beat you, Leanne, and took your title. So now he's got the Leanne title, and he's over here. And I'd say, okay, well, I'm going to challenge him. And he rejects my challenge. He rejects it, he rejects 30 days goes by, fine. The title's back up for grabs again. So you'd have these titles, and maybe they could retire a title after a certain amount of time, but, these titles could build prestige, and they could be really sought after and fun. Well, I think, the idea of having online title matches, just with a little more interesting, stuff, you could hit people with a belt, you could have different stipulations, you could have 3 layers of hell or whatever, 3 stages, you could have all the confetti when the person wins, a little custom entrance with the belt. All that kind of stuff for online matches would just be really, really neat. And again, they can make it so that people wouldn't just exploit it, and cheat their way through, But you could create these belts, and the more matches you win, the more prestige. So maybe you have, the Leanne title. Oh, only 2 people have it. Who cares? But maybe, enough matches go by. It could be a really popular title. It could mean a lot. And so if you won, all these other belts didn't mean anything, but you got the Lien title, and the Lien had built so much prestige. Now you're a really big shot because you've got it, but you're not going to have it forever. Eventually you're going to, stop playing the game and vacate the title. The other thing is to have, kind of a leaderboard that's out there that takes into account, actual skill. Because the problem with the 2K series, the top, let's say 20 people in every single game that I've played from 14 on, these are just people that boosted their way to the top. They got the game, they got together with their friends, and they just played handicap matches where they just let the other guy win. and they just did that, 1,000 times, and all of a sudden they have, the maximum score in the game, and no one can ever beat them, and their name is at the top. That's stupid. That's silly. If you deleted the points that they got from boosting, they would be way at the bottom. So that's just silly. And then there's people that cheated. The cheaters, usually they don't get any points for cheating, but, let's say, like I was in a match the other day, it's like they let you hit them a couple of times, and then they spam the hacked move, over and over again. It's like they're just doing a million finishers to you. And so then they get, 700, 800 points. Of course, if they get 10 points, it's silly. It's a waste of time. But if you had a little bit better moderation, you could remove those people from the leaderboards, and they'd actually reflect, real skill. Another thing is, think about the Halo games. Halo 3 has been out for how many years? And it's still played. It wasn't canceled after 2 years just because Halo 5 is out. But with that game, you have the option to search for players who are at your skill level. You don't just search for any game that's available. The game searching, player searching thing, player match thing for WWE is really dumb. I mean, it's my friends and I will try to set up a game. Like, let's say we want to set up an elimination chamber. The problem is there's like 4 or 5 other chambers out there. We can't get into our own one. You have to get into someone else's game and say, please kick me, which means that you're kicked out of the game and you won't search for their game. It's a silly way to do it. Why not just put a list and you can just join it? Because people try to avoid other players anyway, because it's like, oh, I don't want to play anyone that could beat me. I just want to play first-time players and things like that. But it gets really boring if you can only play people that are random skill rather than people that are your own skill. So I think with Halo, you get to choose, yes, you look for people who are your skill level. If it can't find anyone, then it goes to just whoever's available. But you can look for people who have, your same connection speed, so it's not just like, oh, I'm going to get into a laggy game. Those kind of features would really improve the online experience. But instead, they don't have that. They just have this generic, find a game. And the downloadable content thing with the lack of compatibility. I mean, yes, in 15 and 16, they made the ability to, you can say allow downloadable content on, and you always have to turn it off. Then you can view 99% of the servers. If you have it on, you can only play people that have the exact combination of DLC that you have, which is mostly no one in these games. Because no one buys the DLC because it's just a bunch of characters. That's it. It's better for offline. But now if you get the Games on Demand version, if you download it, if you buy the game and download it just directly from Xbox Live, you're going to get all the DLC anyway. And so now you're screwed over because you can only play people with the DLC. Unless you remember to turn it off every time. It's kind of a pain. If they have compatibility packs, no problem. So, anyway. Another thing with the 2K series with WWE, what I feel like they should do is they should just release one game. Release one game at, just a really, really solid wrestling fighting engine, game with, a basic roster. And don't just make 100 slots for characters. Why not just make it unlimited? Or make it 500 or something like that, like Fire Pro. Because it don't limit the number of downloads per day. That's the stupidest thing that they've done, really. The community creations, since 2K15, they made it so that, you can download 5 things per 24-hour period. And you can only upload 5. And you have to get hundreds of downloads before you can, upload 10. That really limits the creativity. It's very, very bad for the online community. And they don't police the downloads either. So people make like pornographic, images and, just bad stuff, hacked characters. And no one polices it at all. That's silly. So the community creations in 15 and 16 are terrible. Terrible compared to 15, 14. 14 was unlimited. So basically people make hacks and, again, risque stuff just to try to get downloads, and instead of, making quality. So I really feel that, they kind of, shot themselves in the foot there. So I think removing those would make a big difference. But anyway, think about the core game itself. You have, a great wrestling engine, great modes, great wrestlers. But what is the thing? Every year, 2K Games comes out with another one, and it's like, okay, we gotta have a hot new playlist of cool music that everyone likes for the menus. Okay. And we gotta have a cool new roster that has all the hot, wrestlers who are on TV right now, and all the legends that went into the Hall of Fame the last year that now people are remembering again. Like, oh my gosh, AJ Styles, we gotta like him now, and oh man, Sting. Well, here's how you do it. You release the game itself, okay? People keep buying the game. There's nothing wrong with that. It's like, you can repackage it. I mean, do people still buy Halo 3? I walked into a store the other day and I saw Halo 3 brand new on the shelf. People are still buying it. Doesn't everyone already have Halo 3? Apparently not. You can have the Game of the Year edition and the Platinum Hits edition, whatever, the remastered edition. It's still Halo 3. They're still selling it. So with WWE, they could still sell the same basic game, the super duper ultra WWE Universe awesome, edition. Whatever, they release that one game. And then every year they release a DLC, and not a DLC with like 4 new wrestling attires. Who cares about that? No, release an actual DLC that's like a couple of gigs, it's like its own new game. And it would have a new roster that doesn't replace the old roster, just adds it on. And a bunch of new arenas, and a bunch of new songs. That's all you need. And maybe you could have a couple of bug fixes, but generally, you would have the game a solid game, and you just have a bunch of new features, and you download that, and then other people would get the compatibility pack that's much, much smaller, and then they could join people who have the new edition. And so it would just keep on going like that. Maybe you join a game and it would say, hey, this person has the 2018 pack. Do you want to download it? You can buy it for $5 by clicking here, or do you just want to get the compatibility pack? And you say, oh, compatibility pack, okay, then you get in. I mean, games like Unreal Tournament have had this for, decades, where it's like, oh, I join a server and they have a file I don't have. Well, it gives you the option to download it. If you decide not to, you can just cancel out of it and join a server that does have what you want, but, so then they can just keep releasing new DLCs every year. They can make money. But they don't have to keep making a new edition of the game, with bugs and broken stuff. I mean, in 15 and 16, they took out so many generic entrances. They took out a lot of moves. They took out a few, custom creation options just so that they could have room for the new roster. Come on, don't people have hard drives anymore? Don't people have memory cards? Can't they just expand the memory of their console system, quite easily? Why would you need to fit everything just on the disc? So, why offer DLC if you're going to limit it so much? So rather than just having, a DLC that's like, 30 more characters over the course of 6 months, just have like 2K15 should have been a DLC pack. Really, everything in that game should have just been a DLC pack. 16 should have been just a DLC pack. And everyone would just buy the same game, and maybe like after, 10, 15 years, then you release a new game. Oh my gosh, it's a whole new engine. But just like in the old days, you could release more than one wrestling game at a time. It's not like you have to have just one game. You could have a totally different style of game. One's more of a simulation, the other's more of an action game. They do that already to a small degree, but I think they just are so limited. They're in that sports game mindset where it's like, okay, I'll just make a couple tiny improvements and slap a new date on it and a new person on the cover, and people will just assume it's a brand new game. But there's only so many brand new fans that are going to fall for that every time. I just want to play a solid wrestling game. That's it. I can create all the wrestlers I want, but, they just release a game and it's like, oh my gosh, those characters have to be, DLC. Well, okay, then make decent DLC, but put it in a big package of the new game. So anyway, I've been kind of belaboring that point, but I think they would have a much better business model if they did it that way. And what they could do is, let's say they create all this DLC. Does it start to become unwieldy? Well, then after a couple of years, here's what you'd see. You go into the store and you'd have WWE Super Duper Universe, cool, awesome edition. But then it would come with a bonus disc, and that would have all the DLC from 2018. And then you get another edition that has the 2 extra discs, and the 2018 and the 2019 DLC. So people that say, "Oh, I don't want to sit there for 2 hours downloading stuff," well, you just buy the Game of the Year edition, Game of the Decade edition, Super Duper Expanded edition, that has it on disc. But that's what people do anyway. That's what Halo, they would pack the Game of the Year edition with a bonus disc that has, all the extra levels that were created over the last 2 years that now you can just have right away. And it's the same, and if you happen to, you bought the game used, you don't have it anymore, the bonus material, you just download it. Just pay a little extra and download it. So they're just a much more user-friendly way they could do it. Much more fan-friendly, much more accessible. And I think they would build goodwill with the fans if they treated them that way, rather than just being like, "Hey fans, we know you're idiots. We know you're stupid. We know you're dumb. We know you don't care about quality. We just want to squeeze as much money as we can for with as little effort as possible. That's the kind of company we are. And we don't care. Once you've bought our game, we just wash our hands of you. And yet we expect you to come crawling back the next year and do the same thing all over." It's just not good. And I suppose, you figure, well, if our audience is just little tiny kids that just bow to authority and do whatever we say, that, we can get away with it. But really, so many of their fans are not little children and don't want to be treated that way. And I think their games would be much more popular and they'd make a lot more profit if they just went that extra mile to be fan-friendly. Realize what it is to be a fan, to be a video game player, not just someone who markets games to kids. So, anyway, they don't need to be so greedy. They need to be a little more user-friendly. And really, even if they don't add back all those new, old features that they had, for the last 10 years. As you go back to the SmackDown vs. Raw series and SmackDown, there's so many cool features that would still work with today's audience. It would still be really, really cool, really awesome. And they could add those features over time, but again, in the form of like DLC packs. If they just did that, I think they would build a lot more goodwill. So there you go. That's pretty much my list of things. There's so many other things they can add, but those are the basics. There's another kind of funny thing if you want to do into my career mode. How about like a workout gym? I'm not saying put steroids in there, but maybe you could have little mini games where the character lifts weights or runs laps around the gym or eats the protein bars or whatever and builds up his little stats. That could be kind of a fun little thing to do in a game rather than just just doing matches. And just might be a little fun thing. Other video games have done that. Boxing games have done that. Little training workout things. It could be kind of fun. It could be like a little chat room. You're just like a little weight room. You're walking around the locker room. Maybe you talk to the boss, and that your prestige goes up a little bit. You sign an autograph for a fan. That could be your prestige goes up a little bit. Whatever. There's so many ideas that they could use, but they don't. And it's fine if they have like a simplified arcade style game. I kind of like that. I kind of like that it isn't, a slow simulation like that they're apparently trying to do with the next gens. But I think there is a good balance they could strike between the role-playing simulation, arcade action fighter, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, style of gameplay. Keep it fast, keep it interesting. But, give the players those options and don't just shut it down so quickly. And really, there's no reason why 2K17 can't stay on the air, can't stay online for, the duration of the life of the Xbox 360. Games that are less popular, that have been around for many more years, are still online, even if no one plays them. I understand if 2K goes out of business or something, but really it's silly. I mean, allow people to host their own servers, something. So anyway, there you go. There's my list of suggestions. I might come up with more, but those are the main ones. Really, stop the cheating. bring back old features, use the power of the modern systems for more wrestling matches, more interactive environments, more players, a My Career mode that's more simulation based, but also, player friendly, DLC that makes sense, that isn't just greedy and cheap and you know um, zero effort, and better compatibility, and just fix those bugs, and just you come up with a no nonsense, common sense, system for stopping the cheating, most of the cheating, and then just separate it out between the kiddie players and everybody else who maybe wants a more gritty, intense, video game experience, and not just be very tightly clamped down and limited. So, there you go. Thanks for listening.